When my sister Madison offered to help with my wedding planning, I thought she was finally being supportive. I had no idea she was planning to steal my dream venue right from under me using my own deposit money. But what she didn't know was that I had read every single line of that contract, including one very specific clause that she completely overlooked. Let's just say her perfect wedding day didn't go exactly as planned.
I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. 3 months before what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life, I was drowning in wedding stress. My fiancé Derek and I had been engaged for 8 months, and every venue we looked at was either booked solid or way beyond our budget. That's when I found Willowbrook Gardens. The moment I stepped onto the property in Riverside County, I knew this was it. Rolling hills dotted with ancient oak trees, a Victorian mansion with wraparound porches, and gardens that looked like something out of a fairy tale. The venue coordinator, Mrs. Chen, walked us through the grounds, pointing out the ceremony lawn with its natural stone archway and the reception barn with exposed beams and twinkling lights already strung from the rafters. "It's absolutely perfect," I whispered to Derek as we stood on the terrace overlooking the valley below. The price was steep, $8,500 for a Saturday in June, but it was within reach if we cut corners elsewhere. Mrs. Chen explained their booking process, a $3,000 non-refundable deposit to secure the date, with the balance due 30 days before the event. She handed me a thick contract filled with terms and conditions, cancellation policies, and liability clauses. "Take your time reviewing everything," she said with a warm smile. "This is a big decision, and we want you to be completely comfortable with all the details." That night, Derek fell asleep on the couch while I pored over every page of the contract by lamplight. Most of it was standard legal language about damages, weather policies, and vendor requirements. But buried on page 7 was something that caught my attention, a clause about authorized parties and contractual beneficiaries. I made a mental note and kept reading. The next morning, I called Mrs. Chen and put down our deposit. June 15th was officially ours. I was floating on cloud 9 until I made the mistake of telling my family about our venue at Sunday dinner. My parents were thrilled, asking to see photos and already making plans to invite distant relatives. My brother Jake offered to help with the music setup, and even my usually difficult grandmother nodded approvingly when I showed her pictures on my phone. Then there was Madison. My younger sister had always been competitive, but since her boyfriend Ryan proposed 2 months after Derek did, things had gotten worse. She constantly compared our relationships, our ring sizes, our wedding plans. When I described Willowbrook Gardens, her eyes lit up with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. "That sounds amazing, Claire," she said, but her voice had that edge I knew too well. "I'm sure you'll have a lovely little ceremony there." The little stung, but I brushed it off. Madison had always been dramatic. 2 weeks later, she called me crying. "Claire, I'm so stressed about venue hunting," she sobbed into the phone. "Ryan and I have looked at 20 places, and they're all either horrible or way too expensive. I don't know what to do." Despite our complicated relationship, she was still my sister. "Why don't I help you look? I learned a lot about what questions to ask and what to watch out for." "Really? You'd do that for me?" "Of course, we're family." That weekend, I spent an entire Saturday driving around Orange County with Madison and Ryan, visiting potential venues. She rejected each one with increasing frustration. Too small, too outdated, too casual, too formal. By the 5th location, I could see Ryan's patience wearing thin. "What about that place Claire booked?" he suggested as we sat in the parking lot of a country club Madison had just dismissed. "Willowbrook something." "Willowbrook Gardens," I said, "but they're pretty booked up. I got lucky with a cancellation." Madison's tears started fresh. "I just want something beautiful, something romantic and perfect like yours." Against my better judgment, I felt sorry for her. "Look, why don't we drive there? You can at least see what it looks like, and maybe Mrs. Chen knows of similar venues in the area." The hour drive to Riverside County was filled with Madison's increasingly excited chatter about flowers and decorations and guest lists. When we pulled through the gates of Willowbrook Gardens, her reaction was everything I'd feared it would be. "Oh my God," she breathed, pressing her face to the car window. "Claire, this is absolutely stunning." Mrs. Chen happened to be on the property that day and graciously agreed to give us an impromptu tour. Madison peppered her with questions about availability, pricing, and package options. Her enthusiasm was infectious. Even Ryan seemed caught up in the magic of the place. "We actually had a cancellation for August 3rd, Mrs. Chen mentioned as we finished the tour. It's a Saturday, prime summer wedding season." Madison grabbed Ryan's arm. "That's perfect timing. Claire, isn't this amazing? We could practically be venue sisters." The idea made my stomach churn, but I forced a smile. At least August was 2 months after my June wedding. "The deposit would be the same, $3,000 to hold the date," Mrs. Chen continued. "We'll need to think about it," Ryan said sensibly. "Check our budget, look at our calendar." But Madison was already pulling out her phone. "Actually, I need to ask you a huge favor, Claire. Ryan and I have been saving, but we just put a deposit down on our apartment and money's really tight. Could you possibly cover the deposit for now? I promise I'll pay you back as soon as my next bonus comes in." I should have said no. Every instinct told me to say no. But she was my sister, and she looked so hopeful, and I had just gotten a small inheritance from my great-aunt's estate. "I suppose I could loan it to you," I said slowly, "but I'd need it back within a month." "Yes, absolutely! You're the best sister ever!" Madison threw her arms around me, and for a moment, it felt like we were kids again. I wrote the check that day, watching as Mrs. Chen processed Madison's booking for August 3rd. The paperwork was handled quickly. Madison signed the contract without really reading it, too excited about picking out linens and discussing menu options. Over the next few weeks, Madison threw herself into wedding planning with manic energy. She called me daily with updates about dresses and flowers and photographers, always thanking me for making her dream venue possible. True to her word, she paid me back the $3,000 exactly 4 weeks later. Everything seemed fine until I got a phone call from Mrs. Chen 6 weeks before my wedding. "Claire, I'm so sorry to bother you, but I need to discuss a rather unusual situation regarding your booking." My blood ran cold. What kind of situation? "Well, your sister Madison came by yesterday with some paperwork. She's claiming that since you paid her initial deposit, you're actually listed as a contractual beneficiary on her booking, and she wants to invoke a transfer clause to move her August date to your June date." I nearly dropped the phone. "What are you talking about?" According to the contract language, if a booking is made with funds from a third party, who is also a current client, that third party has certain rights regarding date transfers, especially if they're immediate family members. It's an old clause we rarely use, but it's technically valid. My hands were shaking. "She can't do that. That's my wedding date. I booked it months ago." I understand this is distressing, and honestly, I've never seen this clause invoked before. Madison insists that since she's getting married first chronologically, her engagement came before yours, even though she booked later, she has priority for the earlier date. She's also claiming that you initially offered to help her find this venue, which she says constitutes some kind of partnership agreement. None of this made sense. "Mrs. Chen, I need to see exactly what she's claiming. Can you email me copies of everything?" Of course, I have to tell you, Claire, I'm very uncomfortable with this whole situation, but our legal team says that technically, the contract language does support her position, at least partially. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table staring at the documents Mrs. Chen had sent. Madison had indeed found some obscure clause about third-party beneficiaries and date transfers. She'd even had a lawyer draft a letter explaining her position, complete with references to precedent cases and contract law. Derek found me there at midnight, surrounded by papers and legal printouts from Google searches. "This is insane," he said after I explained what was happening. "She can't just steal our wedding date." "According to this, she can." I pointed to the relevant section of the contract. I should have read more carefully.
I never imagined she would do something like this. The next morning, I called Madison directly. "Oh, hi, Claire." Her voice was artificially bright. "I was going to call you later." "Madison, what the hell are you doing?" "What do you mean?"
A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. You know exactly what I mean. Mrs. Chen called me about you trying to steal my wedding date. There was a long pause. When Madison spoke again, her tone had shifted completely. "I'm not stealing anything, Claire. I'm exercising my contractual rights. You should be happy for me. I found a way to make this work for both of us." "Both of us? How is this working for me?" "You get the August date, which is actually better weather anyway. Less chance of rain, and the gardens will be even more lush and green. Plus, think about how much money you'll save, not having to compete with all those other June brides for photographers and caterers." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Madison, I booked that date first. I put down my own deposit. I've been planning this wedding for months." "But technically, since I was engaged first, I have seniority, and you did offer to help me find a venue, which creates a kind of partnership. My lawyer says—" "Your lawyer? You hired a lawyer to steal my wedding date?" "I hired a lawyer to protect my interests. Look, Claire, I know you're upset, but this is actually a good thing. We can coordinate our weddings, share vendors, maybe even do joint bachelor parties. It'll be fun." I hung up on her. The next few days were a blur of phone calls with lawyers, venue coordinators, and increasingly frustrated vendors. Madison had moved fast, already contacting several of my contracted services to inform them about the date change. Some of them were confused, others were annoyed, and a few were threatening to keep their deposits regardless of who was getting married when. My photographer, Jenny Rodriguez, called me personally after receiving Madison's call. "Claire, I've been doing weddings for 12 years, and I've never seen anything like this. Your sister actually asked me if I could give her a discount since she's part of the family business now. What is she talking about? She's trying to steal my wedding date using some contract loophole. Can she do that? Apparently, she thinks she can." Derek and I spent a small fortune on our own lawyer, who confirmed what we already feared. Madison's position was legally questionable, but not entirely without merit. The contract language was ambiguous enough that she might actually succeed, especially if she could prove that I had somehow agreed to help her secure the venue as a partner, rather than just as a sister doing a favor. The good news is that even if she gets the date, you'd likely be entitled to damages, our lawyer, Mr. Peterson, explained. The bad news is that litigation could take months, maybe years. By the time it's resolved, both wedding dates will have passed. That's when I remembered something important, something I'd noticed during my careful reading of the contract months ago, something that Madison, in her rush to steal my date, had clearly overlooked. I pulled out my copy of the Willowbrook Gardens contract and flipped to page 9. There it was, buried in the middle of a paragraph about venue modifications and seasonal restrictions. All contracted events must maintain originally specified guest counts within a variance of no more than 15% as of 60 days prior to event date. Substantial modifications to guest count may result in venue reassignment or contract termination at management discretion. Madison had booked for 75 guests, a small, intimate wedding that fit her budget. But in all her excitement about stealing my date and my larger venue package, she'd forgotten one crucial detail. I had booked 150 guests, and that, as it turned out, was going to make all the difference. The next morning, I called Mrs. Chen with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in days. "Mrs. Chen, I need to ask you about guest capacity requirements at Willowbrook Gardens." "Of course, Claire. What specifically would you like to know?" "My original booking was for 150 guests. Madison's booking is for 75. If she takes my June date, what happens to the capacity difference?" There was a pause as I heard papers shuffling. "Well, that's an interesting question. Let me pull up both contracts. Yes, I see the discrepancy. Your package includes the full mansion, both ceremony and reception areas, premium catering facilities, and extended grounds access. Madison's package is significantly smaller, just the garden ceremony space and the small dining room. But what about the contract clause regarding guest count modifications?
Another pause, longer this time. Oh my, Claire, I think you may have found something important. Let me read this section carefully. Yes, this could be a problem for Madison's request. My heart started racing. What kind of problem? Well, if Madison takes your date, she'd technically be inheriting your package specifications, including the 150 guest capacity, but her contract explicitly states 75 guests. The variance clause requires guest counts to remain within 15% of the original booking as of 60 days prior to the event. I did the math quickly. That means she'd need between roughly 64 and 86 guests to stay compliant. Exactly. But here's the issue. If she's taking your larger package and date, she'd need to accommodate the guest count that package was designed for, or pay substantial modification fees. It's complicated. How complicated? Let me consult with our management team and get back to you. This is definitely uncharted territory. While I waited for Mrs. Chen's call back, I did some investigating of my own. Madison's social media was full of wedding planning posts, and she'd been tagging potential guests in her photos. I counted carefully. She was planning for exactly 75 people, just as her contract specified. Her entire wedding vision, from seating arrangements to catering orders, was built around an intimate gathering. More importantly, she'd already sent save-the-dates for August 3rd. Mrs. Chen called back that afternoon with news that made my day considerably brighter. Claire, I've spoken with our events manager and our legal advisor. The situation is quite clear, actually. If Madison wants to transfer to your June date, she has 3 options. Increase her guest count to match your package requirements, pay the difference for the larger venue package, or accept that the transfer isn't feasible under her current contract terms. What would the cost difference be? Approximately $4,200 in additional venue fees, plus increased catering, staffing, and service charges. We're talking about an extra $8,000 to $10,000 minimum. I knew Madison and Ryan's budget. They'd struggled to afford the original $8,500 package. An additional $10,000 was completely out of their reach. There's something else, Mrs. Chen continued. I reached out to our legal team about the third-party beneficiary clause Madison is trying to invoke. They've determined that the clause applies only when the third party has an ongoing financial interest in the event. Since you were repaid in full, your beneficiary status actually expired. So she can't force the date transfer? Not under the terms she's claiming, no. I'm afraid your sister may have misunderstood the contract language. That evening, I called Madison with a mix of relief and righteous anger. "Hey, Claire," she answered, her voice cautious. "I was hoping we could talk about the wedding situation." "We definitely need to talk. I just got off the phone with Mrs. Chen." "Oh, and what did she say?" "She said your date transfer request won't work, Madison. You can't afford the package upgrade, and your beneficiary clause argument doesn't hold up legally." There was a long silence. When Madison finally spoke, her voice was small and defeated. "What do you mean I can't afford it? The June date comes with a 150-guest package. You booked for 75 guests. To take my date, you'd need to pay for the larger venue package plus all the additional services. Mrs. Chen estimates it at an extra $8,000 to $10,000. That's impossible. We don't have that kind of money." "I know you don't, which means you need to drop this whole scheme and stick with your August date." But instead of apologizing, Madison's tone shifted to anger. "This is ridiculous. You're just trying to find technicalities to keep me from having the date I deserve." "The date you deserve? Madison, I booked and paid for June 15th 6 months ago. But I was engaged first, and you offered to help me find a venue. That has to count for something." "It counts for me being a good sister, which you clearly haven't been to me." "Fine," she snapped. "If I can't have June, then I'll make sure August is so spectacular that everyone will forget about your little spring wedding." She hung up before I could respond. I thought that was the end of it. Madison would sulk for a few days, maybe complain to our parents, but ultimately accept that her scheme had failed. I couldn't have been more wrong. 3 days later, Derek came home from work with a strange expression on his face. "Claire, I need to tell you something, and you're not going to like it." "What now?" "I ran into Ryan at the grocery store. He seemed really uncomfortable, kept trying to avoid talking to me, but eventually he told me what Madison's been up to." My stomach sank. What has she been up to? "She's been calling your vendors, all of them, telling them that there's been a family emergency and that your wedding is being postponed indefinitely." "She's what?" "Some of them believed her, especially since she knew specific details about your contracts. Jenny, your photographer, actually rescheduled another wedding into your date slot before she thought to call you directly." I felt like I was going to be sick. How many vendors did she call? Ryan wasn't sure, but he mentioned the florist, the DJ, the caterer, and the cake decorator. I spent the next 2 hours on the phone with every vendor on my list. The damage was worse than I'd imagined. Madison had been methodical and convincing, claiming that I'd asked her to handle the cancellations because I was too emotional to do it myself. My florist, Carol, had already given away the specialty peonies I'd ordered months in advance. The DJ had booked another event for June 15th. The caterer had sold my premium menu items to another client and would need 2 weeks to reorder specialty ingredients. But the worst news came from my cake decorator, Maria. "I'm so sorry, Claire, but your sister was very convincing. She said you'd decided to go with a different style entirely, and that I should use your design for another bride who was desperate. I've already started the sugar flowers. They take weeks to create properly." "Maria, I never asked her to cancel anything. My wedding is still happening on June 15th. "Oh no. Oh, this is terrible. I don't know if I can recreate your original design in time. The sugar work alone takes 3 weeks, and I'm fully booked with other orders." That night, I called an emergency family meeting. My parents, Derek, and I sat around their dining room table while I explained everything that had happened. My mother looked horrified, my father looked angry, and Derek looked like he wanted to drive straight to Madison's apartment. "I can't believe she would do something so malicious," my mother said, shaking her head. "This goes way beyond sibling rivalry." "We need to call her right now and demand that she fix this," my father said, reaching for his phone. "Dad, I don't think calling her is going to help. She's declared war, and she's not going to back down voluntarily." "Then what do you want to do?" I thought about all the stress, all the sleepless nights, all the money we'd spent on lawyers and emergency vendor meetings. I thought about Madison's smug satisfaction when she thought she'd outsmarted me with her contract loophole. I thought about how she'd systematically tried to destroy my wedding day out of pure spite. "I want to make sure she understands exactly what she's done," I said slowly, "and I want to make sure there are consequences." Derek squeezed my hand under the table. "What did you have in mind?" "Madison thinks she's so clever with her contract reading and her legal maneuvers, but she made one crucial mistake. Which is, she assumed I was too trusting to protect myself. But remember, I'm the one who actually read every word of that Willowbrook Gardens contract. Every single word. And suddenly, I knew exactly what I was going to do." The next morning, I pulled out my copy of the Willowbrook Gardens contract and spread it across my coffee table. Derek watched curiously as I flipped through pages, running my finger on specific clauses and making notes in the margins. "What exactly are you looking for?" he asked. Madison was so focused on that third-party beneficiary clause that she never bothered to read the rest of the contract. But I did, and there's something in here that's going to change everything. I found what I was looking for on page 12, buried in a section titled Event Coordination and Vendor Relations. "Listen to this," I said, reading aloud. "The venue reserves the right to terminate any booking if the contracted party engages in behavior that damages Willowbrook Gardens' relationships with preferred vendors or interferes with other clients' events." Derek looked puzzled. "Okay, but how does that help us?"
Madison doesn't just have a contract with Willowbrook Gardens, she also has contracts with several vendors who work regularly with the venue, and she's been systematically calling people and interfering with their business relationships. I picked up my phone and dialed Mrs. Chen. Claire, how are you holding up? I heard there were some issues with your vendors. That's actually why I'm calling. I need to know, are Carol's Flowers, Riverside Catering, and Perfect Events DJ on your preferred vendor list? Yes, they all are. We work with them regularly and recommend them to our clients. Why do you ask? Because my sister has been calling them, pretending to represent me, canceling my services without authorization. She's cost them money, damaged their relationships with their other clients, and put them in impossible situations. Derek looked puzzled. She did what? She told each of them that I was postponing my wedding indefinitely and that they should give away everything I'd reserved. Some of them have had to disappoint other clients to try to accommodate the changes she requested. Claire, this is very serious. Our preferred vendor relationships are built on trust and professionalism. If Madison has been interfering with their businesses while claiming to represent a Willowbrook Gardens client, I can provide documentation, emails, recorded voicemails, witness statements from the vendors themselves. Please send me everything you have. I need to discuss this with management immediately. While I waited for Mrs. Chen's response, I made another strategic phone call, this time to Carol, my florist. Carol, it's Claire Patterson again. I wanted to follow up on our conversation yesterday. Oh, Clara, I'm still so embarrassed about this whole situation. I should have verified with you directly before making any changes. Actually, that's what I'm calling about. I need you to document exactly what Madison told you, when she called, and what the impact has been on your business. Well, she called Tuesday morning claiming to be your maid of honor. She said you were having a family crisis and needed to postpone everything indefinitely. She was very convincing. She knew details about your order, your color scheme, even your fiancé's name. What did you have to do because of her call? I had to disappoint Mrs. Hendricks, who's been trying to get those specific peonies for her daughter's wedding. I'd already promised them to another bride when your sister called. Now I have 3 unhappy clients, and I'm not sure I can fulfill any of their orders properly. Carol, would you be willing to put all of this in writing, with dates, times, and a description of the business impact? Of course. But Claire, why do you need all this documentation? Because Madison didn't just interfere with my wedding, she interfered with yours and other businesses that work with Willowbrook Gardens, and there are consequences for that. I made similar calls to my DJ, caterer, and cake decorator. Each conversation revealed the same pattern. Madison had been methodical, convincing, and destructive. She'd caused thousands of dollars in damages and put multiple small businesses in impossible positions. By Thursday afternoon, I had a file full of documented evidence. Mrs. Chen called me just as I was scanning the last vendor statement. Claire, I have some very serious news. Management has reviewed the situation, and we're prepared to terminate Madison's contract immediately. My heart leaped. Really? Her interference with our preferred vendors constitutes a material breach of her agreement with us. She's damaged multiple business relationships and cost our partners significant money. We simply cannot allow that kind of behavior from any client. What does that mean for her deposit? Under the termination clause, we're entitled to keep 50% of her deposit as liquidated damages. The remaining $1,500 will be refunded, but her booking for August 3rd is canceled effective immediately. I felt a surge of satisfaction mixed with something that might have been guilt. Mrs. Chen, I appreciate you taking this seriously. Professional relationships are the foundation of our business, Claire. What Madison did was completely unacceptable. That evening, I called my parents to update them on the situation. My mother was quiet for a long moment after I finished explaining. Claire, I understand you're angry, and you have every right to be. But Madison is still your sister. Are you sure this is the right approach? Mom, she didn't just try to steal my wedding date. She systematically sabotaged my vendors, cost small businesses thousands of dollars, and did it all while lying and manipulating people. This isn't about sisterly competition anymore. I know, sweetie. I just worry about the family fallout from all this.
The family fallout started when Madison decided to wage war on my wedding. I'm just making sure there are consequences for her actions. Friday morning, Madison called me. Her voice was shaking with rage. Claire, what the hell did you do? Good morning to you too, Madison. Don't play dumb with me. Willowbrook Gardens just called and canceled my wedding. They're keeping half my deposit and saying I violated my contract. This is what you're doing, isn't it? Actually, Madison, this is your doing. You interfered with their vendor relationships, cost multiple businesses money, and lied to people while claiming to represent me. Those actions have consequences. I was trying to postpone your wedding, not to hurt any businesses. You were trying to sabotage my wedding out of spite. The fact that you hurt other people in the process just shows how selfish and reckless you've become. You can't do this to me. I need that venue. You should have thought about that before you decided to declare war on my wedding day. This is insane, over one stupid date. This isn't about a date, Madison. This is about you trying to manipulate, lie, and steal your way into getting what you want, regardless of who gets hurt. She was crying now. Claire, please, I'm begging you. Call them back and tell them it was all a misunderstanding. I'll apologize to everyone, I'll fix whatever I broke. Just please don't let them cancel my wedding. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Then I remembered the past 2 weeks of stress, the vendor calls, the legal fees, and the systematic way she'd tried to destroy something I'd worked so hard to plan. Madison, you made your choices. Now you get to live with the consequences. I hate you, she whispered. I know, but that's your problem, not mine. After I hung up, Derek found me sitting on our back porch, staring out at our small garden. How do you feel? He asked, settling into the chair next to me. Honestly, relieved. And maybe a little sad. Sad. I keep thinking about when we were kids, how Madison always wanted everything I had. My toys, my friends, my grades. I thought she'd grow out of it eventually. Some people never do. I know, but she's still my sister. Derek took my hand. A sister who tried to steal your wedding and sabotage your vendors. You did the right thing, Claire. I hope so. That weekend, I spent my time rebuilding what Madison had tried to destroy. Carol was able to source replacement peonies through a contact in Oregon. My DJ found a solution by bringing in additional equipment from his partner's company. The caterer worked overtime to recreate my original menu, and Maria, my cake decorator, agreed to take on an assistant to help recreate the sugar flowers. It cost us an extra $2,800 in rush fees and emergency sourcing, but my June 15th wedding was back on track. Madison, meanwhile, was scrambling to find a new venue for August. According to my mother, most places were already booked for summer weekends, and the few available options were either terrible or wildly expensive. She's talking about postponing until next spring, my mother told me during our weekly phone call. Ryan is frustrated because they've already sent save the dates and booked their honeymoon. That's unfortunate, I said, and I mostly meant it. Claire, I know she brought this on herself, but is there any way you could— No, Mom. Whatever you're about to ask, the answer is no. Madison made her choices, and I'm not going to rescue her from the consequences.
I understand. I just hate seeing our family torn apart like this. Madison tore it apart when she decided that stealing from me was acceptable. I'm not the villain here. But as I hung up the phone, I wondered if being right was worth the cost of losing my sister forever. 2 weeks after Madison's contract termination, I thought the drama was finally over. I was wrong. It started with weird hang-up calls at odd hours. Then Derek noticed someone had been through our mailbox, leaving it slightly open with letters askew. When my car got keyed in the grocery store parking lot, I began to suspect these weren't random incidents. The confirmation came when my coworker Stephanie pulled me aside after a team meeting. Claire, this might be nothing, but my cousin works at Riverside Catering and she mentioned something strange. What kind of strange? Someone's been calling around to catering companies, claiming to be you and asking detailed questions about food safety violations and health department complaints. My cousin said the caller seemed to be fishing for dirt on businesses you're working with. My stomach dropped. Did your cousin recognize the voice? She said it sounded like a younger woman, very polite and professional. But when she asked for a callback number, the caller claimed she'd call back and never did. That evening, I called Derek at work and asked him to come home early. We need to talk, and I don't want to do it over the phone. When he arrived, I showed him a list I'd been compiling, all the strange incidents from the past 2 weeks, including 3 separate reports from vendors about suspicious calls asking for references on their work for my wedding. Claire, this is starting to look like harassment. I think Madison is trying to sabotage my wedding by going after the vendors directly. If she can't have Willowbrook Gardens, maybe she figures she can at least ruin my day. What do you want to do about it? Before I could answer, my phone rang. It was Carol from the flower shop, and she sounded upset. Claire, I need to warn you about something. I just got off the phone with someone claiming to be from the health department. They said they'd received complaints about my refrigeration systems and wanted to schedule an inspection for next Friday, the day before your wedding. What did you tell them? I asked for their badge number and callback information, but they said they'd call back and hung up. I called the actual health department, and they have no record of any complaints or scheduled inspections. Carol, I think someone is trying to interfere with my wedding vendors. Have you gotten any other unusual calls recently? Actually, yes. Earlier this week, someone called asking very detailed questions about my insurance coverage and whether I'd ever had any contamination issues. I thought it was strange, but I figured maybe it was a potential client doing research. After hanging up with Carol, I made calls to my other vendors. The pattern was clear. Someone had been systematically contacting each of them, asking probing questions, requesting sensitive business information, and in some cases, making false official claims. Maria, my cake decorator, had received a call from someone claiming to be from the city licensing department. My DJ had been contacted by someone posing as a reporter doing a story on wedding industry scams. The caterer had fielded questions from a supposed insurance investigator. This has gone too far, Derek said when I finished updating him. She's moved beyond petty revenge into something that could seriously damage these people's businesses. I need to call Mrs. Chen and let her know what's happening. But Mrs. Chen wasn't available until Monday, and I spent the weekend growing increasingly anxious about what Madison might do next. Monday morning brought the answer. I arrived at work to find my boss, Mr. Williams, waiting in my office with a concerned expression. Claire, I need to speak with you privately. We went into his office, where he closed the door and gestured for me to sit down. I received a very troubling phone call this morning from someone claiming to be conducting a background investigation. They asked detailed questions about your work performance, your character, and specifically about your upcoming wedding. What kind of questions? They wanted to know if you'd been distracted lately, if you'd been missing work for wedding planning, if there had been any conflicts with coworkers. They also asked if I knew anything about you being involved in legal disputes or family drama. My face burned with embarrassment. Mr. Williams, I can explain. Claire, I told them I don't discuss employee matters with random callers, and I hung up. But I'm concerned about why someone would be making these inquiries. I took a deep breath and gave him the abbreviated version of Madison's escalating behavior. Mr. Williams listened with growing alarm.
This sounds like stalking behavior, Claire. Have you considered involving the police? I wasn't sure they could do anything since she hasn't made any direct threats. Harassment is harassment, whether the threats are explicit or not. You should at least file a report to create a paper trail. That afternoon, I drove to the local police station and spoke with Officer Martinez about the situation. She listened carefully and took detailed notes. You're right that this doesn't rise to the level of criminal charges yet, but it's definitely harassment. I'd recommend documenting everything and considering a restraining order if the behavior escalates. What would constitute escalation? Direct threats, showing up at your home or workplace, any physical intimidation. Right now, she's staying just inside the legal boundaries, but people who engage in this kind of systematic harassment often push further. That evening, I called an emergency family meeting. My parents arrived looking haggard. Apparently, Madison had been calling them multiple times a day, alternating between sobbing about her ruined wedding and ranting about my vindictive behavior. She's not sleeping, she's barely eating, and Ryan is at his wit's end, my mother reported. He's talking about postponing their engagement entirely. Mom, I'm sorry Madison is struggling, but she's now moved into harassing my employers and trying to sabotage my vendors with fake official calls. This isn't just about wedding drama anymore. What do you mean? My father asked. I explained the calls to my vendors, my boss, and the various impersonation attempts. My parents exchanged worried glances. Claire, we had no idea it had gotten this bad, my father said. This isn't just wedding stress. This is concerning behavior that needs to stop. We need to have an intervention, my mother said. Madison clearly can't see how far she's gone. No, I said firmly. I'm done trying to manage Madison's behavior. I filed a police report, I'm considering a restraining order, and I'm focusing on protecting my wedding and my vendors. A restraining order? My mother gasped. Against your own sister? Against someone who is systematically harassing me and the people I work with. The fact that she's my sister makes it worse, not better. Tuesday morning brought a new development. Mrs. Chen called with alarming news. Claire, I need to inform you that we've had some concerning incidents here at the venue. What kind of incidents? Someone has been calling our office multiple times, claiming to be you and requesting detailed information about our security protocols, staff schedules, and event logistics. When we asked for verification, they became evasive. That's definitely not me. What kind of information were they after? Very specific details about access points, vendor arrival times, and emergency procedures. It felt like someone was casing the venue for some kind of disruption. My blood ran cold. Mrs. Chen, I think my sister is planning something for my wedding day. I'm afraid I agree. We've increased our security and put all staff on alert, but I wanted you to be aware of the situation. That night, Derek and I sat down and made a difficult decision. We need to hire private security for the wedding, he said. I can't believe it's come to this. My own sister. Claire, this isn't the sister you grew up with anymore. This is someone who's lost all perspective and is willing to destroy anything to get what she wants. What if she shows up anyway? What if she causes a scene? Then security will handle it, and we'll deal with whatever happens, but we're not going to let her ruin our day. Wednesday evening, as I was reviewing security arrangements with the company Derek had hired, my phone rang. It was Madison. Claire, we need to talk. Madison, I've told you I'm done talking. You need to stop. No, listen to me. I know you think I'm crazy, but I just found out something about Ryan that changes everything. Despite myself, I was curious. What are you talking about? He's been cheating on me with my maid of honor, Jessica. I found texts on his phone, hotel receipts, everything. The whole reason he wanted to postpone our wedding wasn't because of the venue situation. It was because he's been planning to break up with me. I felt a stab of unwanted sympathy. Madison, I'm sorry if that's true, but don't you see? This whole thing was pointless. I destroyed everything trying to get a perfect wedding for a man who doesn't even want to marry me. For the first time in weeks, Madison sounded like my sister instead of a stranger. But I couldn't let my guard down. Madison, I'm sorry you're hurting, but that doesn't excuse what you've done. You need to get help. I know, she said quietly. Claire, I know I've gone too far. I know you probably hate me now. But please, don't let this destroy our family completely. Then stop the harassment, Madison. Stop calling my vendors, stop impersonating officials, and leave me alone until after my wedding. Can you do that? There was a long pause. I'll try. You need to do more than try. You need to stop completely. Okay, I promise. But as I hung up the phone, I wondered if Madison's promises were worth anything anymore. For 3 blissful days after Madison's promise, everything was quiet. No strange phone calls, no vendor harassment, no mysterious incidents. I started to believe that maybe her breakup with Ryan had finally snapped her back to reality. Then Thursday arrived, exactly 1 week before my wedding. I was at my final dress fitting when my phone started buzzing with urgent calls. The first was from Carol at the flower shop. Claire, you need to get down here right now. There's been an incident. What kind of incident? Someone broke into my shop last night. They didn't steal anything, but they destroyed all your flowers. Every single arrangement, all the specialty peonies, everything for your wedding is ruined. My knees went weak. Are you sure it was targeted? Claire, they left all the other wedding orders untouched. They only destroyed yours. And they left a note. What did it say? Some people don't deserve happiness. I drove to Carol's shop with shaking hands, Derek meeting me there after I called him in a panic. The scene inside was heartbreaking. Beautiful arrangements that Carol had worked on for weeks were scattered across the floor, petals ground into the carpet, specialty flowers that had been shipped from across the country destroyed beyond salvation. The police have been here already, Carol said, tears in her eyes. They took photos and collected the note for fingerprints, but honestly, unless someone saw the person breaking in… Carol, I'm so sorry. This is all my fault. No, this is not your fault. This is the fault of whoever did this. But Claire, I have to be honest with you. I don't know if I can replace all these flowers by next Saturday. Some of these varieties take weeks to source. As we surveyed the damage, my phone rang again. This time it was Maria, my cake decorator. Claire, I don't know how to tell you this, but something happened to your cake. What do you mean? I came in this morning to put the finishing touches on your sugar flowers, and someone had gotten into my kitchen. They poured bleach all over the cake tiers and destroyed 3 weeks of sugar work. I sank into one of Carol's chairs. Maria, was anything else damaged? Just your cake. Everything else in the kitchen was untouched. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were looking for. Derek took the phone from my shaking hands. Maria, this is Derek, Claire's fiancé. Did you call the police? They're here now, but Derek, I need to be honest. Recreating this cake in 6 days is going to be nearly impossible. The sugar flowers alone take 2 weeks to dry properly. After hanging up, I called Mrs. Chen at Willowbrook Gardens. Mrs. Chen, I need to ask if you've had any security issues at the venue in the last 24 hours. Actually, yes. Our night security guard reported that someone tried to climb the fence around midnight last night. When he approached, they ran off. We assumed it was just kids, but given everything that's been happening… Did he get a description? A small person, in dark clothing, appeared to be a woman. They left a car parked down the road with the engine running. I closed my eyes. Despite her promise, Madison had escalated to actual breaking and entering, property destruction, and now attempted trespassing at my venue. Mrs. Chen, I need to increase security for the wedding. Can you recommend a company? Of course, I'll have our preferred security team contact you immediately. The rest of Thursday was spent filing police reports, dealing with insurance claims, and making emergency calls to backup vendors. Carol managed to find a florist in Los Angeles who had some of the flowers I needed, but it would cost double the original price and require driving 3 hours each way to pick them up. Maria found a cake decorator in San Diego willing to work around the clock to create a replacement cake, but it would be a simpler design and cost an additional $1,800 in rush fees. By Thursday evening, Derek and I had spent an extra $4,300 trying to salvage my wedding, and we still weren't sure everything would come together in time. Friday morning brought another crisis. I was at work when my phone rang. It was Officer Martinez from the police department. Claire, we got the fingerprint results back from the flower shop break-in. We have a match in the system. Madison? Yes, Madison Patterson was arrested for vandalism 3 years ago during a college protest. Her prints are all over that note. What does this mean? It means we can arrest her for breaking and entering, vandalism, and stalking. Do you want to press charges? I thought about Madison's call 3 days ago, her promise to stop, her tears about Ryan's betrayal. Then I thought about Carol's destroyed flowers, Maria's ruined cake, and the fear I'd been living with for weeks. Yes, I want to press charges. We'll issue a warrant this afternoon. But when the police went to Madison's apartment, she was gone. Her landlord said she'd packed up in the middle of the night and left no forwarding address. Her phone went straight to voicemail.
Even Ryan, when the police contacted him, claimed he had no idea where she'd gone. "This is actually good news," Derek said when I told him. "If she's run off, she probably won't be back in time to cause problems at the wedding. Unless she's just hiding until the wedding day to maximize the damage she can cause." Saturday, the day before my wedding, I was a nervous wreck. Every phone call made me jump. Every unexpected noise had me looking over my shoulder. The security team was in place at Willowbrook Gardens, extra guards were posted at vendor locations, and Derek had even hired a bodyguard to stay with me.
But despite all the precautions, I couldn't shake the feeling that Madison wasn't finished. The feeling proved justified when my mother called that evening. "Claire, I just got a very disturbing call from Madison." "Where is she? The police are looking for her." "I don't know where she is, but honey, she's not well. She was rambling about how you've ruined her life, how you've turned the whole family against her, how you don't deserve to be happy when she's miserable." "Mom, she destroyed my vendor's property and tried to break into my wedding venue. She needs help, but that's not my responsibility anymore." "I know, sweetie, but she said something that scared me. She said she was going to make sure you remember your wedding day for all the wrong reasons." "Did she say anything specific about what she's planning?" "No, but Claire, she sounded unhinged, not like herself at all. I'm worried about what she might do." That night, I barely slept. Derek and I went over security plans, emergency protocols, and worst-case scenarios. The bodyguard, a no-nonsense woman named Sarah, assured me that she'd handled much worse situations and that my wedding would proceed without incident. "The key is not to let fear ruin your day," she said. "We'll handle any problems that arise. Your job is to focus on marrying the man you love." Sunday morning dawned bright and clear, perfect wedding weather. As I got ready in the bridal suite at Willowbrook Gardens, surrounded by my bridesmaids and trying to focus on the joy of the day, I kept checking my phone for updates from security. So far, everything was quiet. The flowers had arrived from Los Angeles and were more beautiful than I dared hope. The replacement cake was stunning, even if it was simpler than the original design. My dress fit perfectly, my makeup looked flawless, and Derek had sent me a sweet note telling me how much he loved me and how excited he was to become my husband. For the first time in weeks, I started to believe that maybe everything would be okay. Then, as my bridesmaids were putting on their finishing touches and my mother was helping me with my veil, Sarah knocked on the door. "Claire, I need to speak with you privately." The serious expression on her face told me everything I needed to know. Madison had made her move. Sarah closed the door behind her and kept her voice low. "We have a situation. Madison is here." My heart stopped. "What do you mean she's here?" "She's not on the property yet, but she's been spotted in the parking area about half a mile down the road. She's sitting in a car with what appears to be several large bags or containers." "Containers of what?" "We don't know yet, but my team is treating this as a potential threat. I've contacted local law enforcement, and they're en route." My mother stepped forward. "Sarah, what exactly are you suggesting Madison might do?" Given her recent escalation to property destruction and her current mental state, we have to assume she's planning some kind of disruption. The fact that she's waited until the actual wedding day suggests she wants maximum impact. One of my bridesmaids, Jessica, started pacing. "Should we postpone the ceremony?" "No," I said firmly. "Absolutely not. I'm not letting Madison ruin this day. We'll deal with whatever she's planning." Sarah nodded approvingly. "That's the right attitude. Here's what we're going to do. I'm positioning additional security around the perimeter, and we're moving up the ceremony start time by 30 minutes. The less time she has to implement whatever plan she's hatched, the better." "What about the guests? Should we warn them?" "We'll handle it discreetly. Most of your guests are already seated, and Derek is ready whenever you are." As Sarah left to coordinate with her team, my mother helped me finish getting ready with shaking hands. "Claire, honey, are you sure about this? Maybe we should." "Mom, I've been planning this wedding for months.
Madison has already cost me thousands of dollars, weeks of stress, and nearly ruined relationships with my vendors. I'm not giving her the satisfaction of stopping my wedding day, too. 20 minutes later, as I lined up with my bridesmaids for the processional, Sarah's voice crackled through her radio. Target is on the move. She's heading toward the main entrance. Through the window, I could see guests turning in their seats as Madison's car pulled into the main parking area. She got out carrying what looked like a large canvas bag and started walking purposefully toward the ceremony area. "Should we wait?" my maid of honor, Lisa, whispered. "No, start the music. If Madison wants to make a scene, she can do it while I'm walking down the aisle to marry the man I love." The wedding march began, and my bridesmaids started their procession. I could see Derek at the altar, looking handsome and nervous, his eyes lighting up as he saw the ceremony beginning. As I stepped out of the bridal suite, I could hear commotion from the direction of the ceremony area. Raised voices, someone shouting my name, and what sounded like security personnel giving commands. But I kept walking. My father appeared at my side, looking concerned. "Claire, are you sure about this timing?" "Dad, I've never been more sure of anything in my life."
We began walking down the petal-strewn path toward the ceremony area. Ahead of us, I could see that most guests were still seated, though some were craning their necks to look toward the parking area where the disturbance was coming from. Then, I saw her. Madison was being restrained by two security guards near the gift table, about 50 feet from where the ceremony was taking place. She was struggling against them, shouting something I couldn't quite make out over the wedding music. Derek saw her too, and I watched his jaw tighten with determination. He gave me a small nod that said, "Keep going, don't let her win." As my father and I approached the altar, Madison's voice became clearer. "She doesn't deserve this. She ruined my life. She destroyed my wedding." Some guests were now openly staring, but our officiant, Reverend Thompson, simply raised his voice and continued with the ceremony introduction. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the union of Claire and Derek in holy matrimony." Madison was still shouting, "Claire, look what you've done to our family! Look what you've done to me!" I turned slightly to look at her. She was disheveled, her hair unkempt, her clothes wrinkled like she'd slept in her car. The canvas bag she'd been carrying had spilled open during her struggle with security, revealing what looked like rotten vegetables and eggs. Our eyes met across the ceremony space, and for a moment, I saw my little sister, the one who used to braid my hair and beg me to read her bedtime stories. But that person was buried under layers of rage, jealousy, and what looked like genuine psychological breakdown. "Madison," I called out, loud enough for her to hear me clearly. "I'm sorry you're in pain, but this ends now." Security was moving her toward the parking area, but she kept shouting over her shoulder, "You'll regret this, Claire. You'll regret what you've done to me." The guests had fallen completely silent, watching this family drama unfold. I realized this was my moment to either let Madison's breakdown define my wedding day or to reclaim it. I turned back to Derek and Reverend Thompson. "Please continue with the ceremony." "Claire," Reverend Thompson said softly, "would you like to take a moment to—" "No, I'd like to marry my fiancé, please." Derek's face broke into a huge smile, and I heard several guests murmur approvingly. As the ceremony continued, I could hear Madison's voice growing fainter as security escorted her off the property. By the time we reached our vows, the only sounds were birds singing in the oak trees and the soft rustle of the breeze through the gardens. "Derek," I said, looking into his eyes and speaking loud enough for our guests to hear, "I promise to love you through every challenge, every storm, and every family drama that comes our way." The guests laughed, and the tension that had gripped the ceremony began to dissipate. Derek's voice was strong and clear as he responded, "Claire, I promise to stand by your side against anyone who tries to hurt you, to support you through every difficult decision, and to love you fiercely and protectively for the rest of my life."
When Reverend Thompson pronounced us husband and wife, the applause was thunderous. As Derek and I kissed, I could see our guests wiping tears from their eyes, some from emotion, some from relief that we'd gotten through Madison's disruption. During the reception, several people approached me to comment on how I'd handled the situation. "I've never seen anything like that," Derek's grandmother said, squeezing my hand. "The grace you showed under pressure was remarkable." My college friend Amy was more direct. "Claire, I can't believe you didn't let your sister ruin your ceremony. I would have lost it completely." "She's already taken too much from me," I replied. "I wasn't going to let her take this too." As the evening went on, I learned more about what Madison had been planning. According to Sarah, the bag she'd brought contained not just rotten produce, but also a portable speaker and a playlist of what appeared to be funeral dirges and breakup songs. "She was planning to pelt you with garbage while playing sad music during your ceremony," Sarah explained. "It's honestly one of the more creative disruption attempts I've seen, but also one of the most pathetic." The police had arrested Madison for trespassing, attempted assault, and violation of the restraining order I'd filed the day before. She was being held pending a psychiatric evaluation. "What happens now?" Derek asked as we slowly danced to our first song as a married couple. "Now we focus on us," I said. "Madison has to face the consequences of her choices, but that's not our problem anymore." "Do you think you'll ever reconcile with her?" I thought about it as we swayed to the music, surrounded by friends and family who had supported us through this bizarre ordeal. "Maybe someday, if she gets help and takes responsibility for what she's done. But Derek, I'm done enabling her behavior or making excuses for her. Some bridges burn because they were built on unstable ground." As midnight approached and our reception wound down, I reflected on everything that had happened. Madison had tried to steal my venue, sabotage my vendors, destroy my wedding preparations, and finally, disrupt my actual ceremony. But she had failed.
I was married to the man I loved, surrounded by people who cared about us, in a venue that was more beautiful than I'd ever imagined. The flowers were gorgeous, the cake was delicious, and the photography captured not just our joy, but our resilience in the face of family betrayal. Madison's final desperate attempt had only served to highlight the strength of our relationship and the support of our real family and friends. 3 months after our wedding, Derek and I were settling into married life when I received an unexpected phone call from a number I didn't recognize. "Claire, it's Dr. Amanda Foster from Riverside County Mental Health Services. I'm calling about your sister, Madison." My stomach immediately tensed. "Is she okay?" "She's stable now, but I wanted to reach out because she's been asking to speak with you. She's been in our residential program since her arrest, and she's made significant progress in her treatment." "What kind of treatment?" "Madison was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder with narcissistic traits, complicated by a severe depressive episode triggered by her relationship breakdown. She's been in intensive therapy for 3 months and has gained considerable insight into her behavior." I sat down heavily on our couch. "Dr. Foster, I appreciate that she's getting help, but I'm not sure I'm ready to have contact with her." "I understand completely, and I want you to know that this call is entirely voluntary. Madison specifically asked me to tell you that she doesn't expect forgiveness or reconciliation. She simply wants the opportunity to apologize and take full responsibility for her actions." Has she been taking responsibility? Because the last time I saw her, she was screaming that everything was my fault. That's exactly what she wants to address. "Claire, I've been doing this for 15 years, and I've rarely seen someone work as hard as Madison has to understand and own her behavior. The Madison who disrupted your wedding was in the midst of a psychological crisis. The Madison I'm working with now has genuine insight into how destructive and wrong her actions were." Derek came into the room and saw me on the phone. I mouthed, "Madison," and watched his expression harden. "Dr. Foster, can I think about it and call you back?" "Of course. Take all the time you need. I'll be here when you're ready." After I hung up, Derek sat beside me and took my hand. "What did she want?" "Madison's been in a psychiatric facility since the arrest. Her doctor says she's been diagnosed and is in treatment.
She wants to apologize. Do you want to hear her apology? I thought about it for a long moment. Part of me is curious to know if she's really changed, but part of me thinks this might just be another manipulation. What does your gut tell you? That I need more information before I decide anything. The next day, I called Dr. Foster back with a list of questions. Has Madison admitted to breaking into my vendors' businesses? Yes, fully. She's provided detailed admissions to law enforcement and has been working on a restitution plan to compensate the businesses she damaged. Has she acknowledged that her behavior was stalking and harassment? Absolutely. She's written extensively about her escalating obsession with controlling your wedding and how she justified increasingly extreme behavior to herself. What about the family manipulation, the way she tried to turn our parents against me? Madison has spent considerable time examining her lifelong patterns of triangulation and emotional manipulation within your family system. She specifically requested family therapy sessions with your parents to address these issues. The questions went on for 20 minutes. Dr. Foster answered each one thoughtfully, providing specific examples of Madison's insights and behavioral changes. Claire, I want to be clear that I'm not asking you to trust Madison or rebuild a relationship with her. What I'm offering is an opportunity for you to hear her take full accountability, which might provide closure for you regardless of what you decide about future contact. Would it be a face-to-face meeting? Not necessarily. She could write you a letter, we could arrange a phone call, or if you preferred, you could meet in a controlled environment with me present. The choice would be entirely yours. That weekend, Derek and I discussed it extensively. I think you should do it, he said finally. Not for her, but for you. You've been carrying this anger and hurt for months, and maybe hearing her take real responsibility would help you let go of it. What if it's all fake? What if she's just learned what to say to manipulate mental health professionals? Then you'll know that too, and you can close that door permanently with a clear conscience. I decided to start with a letter. 2 weeks later, I received a thick envelope from the treatment facility. Inside was a handwritten letter that was unlike anything Madison had ever written to me before. Dear Claire, it began, I know that no apology can undo the damage I caused to your wedding, your relationships, and your sense of safety. I know that my actions were inexcusable, regardless of my mental state or personal circumstances. But I want you to know exactly what I understand about what I did, and why I did it, not to excuse it, but to take full responsibility for it. The letter went on for 6 pages. Madison detailed every destructive action she'd taken, from the initial attempt to steal my venue, to the break-ins at vendor locations, to the final disruption attempt. She explained the thought processes that had led to each escalation, acknowledging how she justified increasingly extreme behavior by telling herself that I had somehow wronged her first. I realize now that I've been competing with you since childhood, not because you ever made me feel inferior, but because I couldn't tolerate the idea that anyone else in our family might be happier or more successful than me. Your wedding became a symbol of everything I felt I was missing in my own life, and instead of dealing with my own problems, I tried to destroy your happiness. She addressed the financial damage she'd caused, the emotional trauma, and the impact on our extended family. I've spoken with Mom and Dad extensively about the ways I manipulated them against you over the years. I convinced them that sibling conflicts were always equally both our faults, when I was usually the instigator. I made them feel guilty for celebrating your achievements by acting hurt and left out. I turned family gatherings into drama to keep attention focused on my needs. The letter concluded with something I'd never heard from Madison before, a complete acknowledgement that she had no right to expect forgiveness. I'm not writing this because I expect you to forgive me, or because I want a relationship with you. I'm writing this because you deserve to know that someone takes full responsibility for the pain you endured. You were a good sister to me, and I repaid your kindness with betrayal and cruelty. That's on me, not on you. Derek found me crying as I finished reading it. Good tears or bad tears? He asked gently. I think relief tears? She finally gets it. She finally understands what she did and why it was wrong. How does that make you feel? Like maybe I can stop being angry now. Not because I'm ready to forgive her, but because she's finally stopped making me feel like I was crazy for being hurt by her actions. Over the following months, Madison continued her treatment and gradually began rebuilding relationships with our parents. She completed her restitution payments to Carol, Maria, and my other vendors. She attended court-ordered anger management classes and continued individual therapy even after her residential program ended. I didn't reach out to her, and she didn't contact me directly. But through our parents, I learned that she had broken up with Ryan permanently, moved to a different city for a fresh start, and was working in a job where she could use her organizational skills in a positive way. A year after our wedding, I received a small package in the mail. Inside was a beautiful hand-carved wooden jewelry box with a simple note. "For your wedding jewelry, I hope you and Derek are very happy. M." There was no return address and no request for contact, just a thoughtful gift that acknowledged my marriage without intruding on my life. Derek found me examining the jewelry box that evening. "Are you going to keep it?" "I think so. It's beautiful, and it feels like a genuine gesture without any strings attached." "How do you feel about Madison now?" I thought about it carefully. I feel neutral. Not angry anymore, but not ready for a relationship either. She's my sister, and I hope she's doing well, but she's also someone who caused me tremendous pain. Maybe someday we'll be able to have some kind of limited contact, but for now, this feels right. No regrets about how you handled everything? None. I protected my wedding, I held her accountable for her actions, and I didn't let her destroy my happiness. That's exactly what I needed to do. 2 years later, when Derek and I celebrated our second wedding anniversary at Willowbrook Gardens, I thought about how the venue had become a symbol of resilience rather than conflict. Mrs. Chen greeted us like old friends and gave us a tour of the new security measures they'd implemented. "Your situation actually helped us improve our protocols for all our clients," she said. "We now do background checks on immediate family members and have much better systems for detecting harassment." As Derek and I walked through the gardens where we'd been married, I realized that Madison's attempts to ruin our wedding had actually strengthened our relationship and taught us both how to face adversity together. "Do you think we'll ever see her again?" Derek asked as we stood under the stone archway where we'd exchanged vows. "Maybe at a family funeral someday, or a milestone birthday for our parents. But if we do, I think I'll be okay with it. She can't hurt me anymore." "Because you won't let her?" "Because I finally understand that her problems were never about me. They were about her inability to be happy for other people. And that's something she has to fix for herself." As we drove home that evening, I reflected on how the entire ordeal had taught me something valuable about setting boundaries, protecting what matters most, and refusing to let other people's dysfunction derail my life. Madison had tried to steal my wedding venue deposit, sabotage my vendors, and ruin my marriage ceremony. But in the end, she'd only succeeded in teaching me how strong I could be when it really mattered. And for that lesson, I was almost grateful. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.